Hi everyone. In this video lecture, we are going to talk about lecture 9, PowerPoint slide. So basically, if you remember in lecture 8, we started talking about the various types of cost, marginal cost, average cost, total cost, economic cost. Then we talked about explicit cost, implicit cost. So in this video lecture, we are going to finish talking about the cost side, talking about the cost side that represents the producers. So to start off, a little bit of refresher about the law of diminishing returns. Uh, According to the law of diminishing returns, it basically states that when you produce more, after a certain point, less additional output will result with each input. Okay, so remember we last class or in the last video lecture we were looking like when we added the number of workers, the output increased, marginal product also increased for a little bit, but after some point the additional product that comes by adding an extra input or extra number of worker will be falling or will be going down. Okay, so again, the definition of marginal product is basically it is the additional amount of product produced by it is the additional amount of product produced by one additional worker. So let's say we have 4 employees right now that make mobile phones for us, and they produce 40 mobile phones. Now let's say I add the 5th worker, and now my total output is 45 mobile phones. So the additional output that I'm getting from adding that one additional worker is 5 mobile phones, and that is the marginal product. Okay, when there is less additional output added by each additional worker, the marginal cost will increase, right? So basically what it is saying is the point where marginal product starts decreasing, that's when marginal cost, the cost of that labor, is going up. Because if you think it, I am adding this 5th worker to produce mobile phones, but I'm only getting 5 additional mobile phones. So my additional output is the rate of my additional output is decreasing, but the cost for that labor is going up because I still have to pay him the same salary. So in that way, the additional cost is rising. In general, the marginal cost curve is basically a U-shaped curve that goes up very fast, and it is U-shaped because of the law of diminishing marginal returns. Okay, just with what we just discussed, because marginal product starts declining after some point, your marginal cost starts going up, and that's why we have a U-shaped marginal cost curve. As more workers are hired, the marginal product will increase at first, and if you go back to the examples we did in the video lecture, you will see the exact same thing. So when we increase the number of workers, at first marginal product will increase, but after some point the marginal product will start going down, and when the marginal product is going down, your marginal cost starts rising. So if marginal cost is increasing, marginal product is decreasing, and on the other hand, if marginal cost is decreasing, then your marginal product is increasing. So they are, marginal product and marginal cost have opposite relationship. Additional output and the additional cost, the relationship between them, it is a negative or inverse relationship. Okay, then moving on, we also have to look in addition to the marginal cost curve, we also have to look at the average total cost curve and average variable cost curve. Okay, now these 3 curves are interrelated and they have very important relationships. I want to draw the graph and then I want to explain how they are related. Okay, so let me first draw the graph so you have an understanding how average total cost curve, average variable cost curve, and marginal cost curves look like. Okay, so on the x-axis we have output or the total product you're producing, and on the y-axis we have cost, the cost incurred by the businesses. Okay, marginal cost curve usually looks like this. It goes down and then it reaches a minimum point and then it starts going up. So the point where it is going down, this is where marginal cost is decreasing, but marginal product is increasing. But from this point, marginal product is decreasing, and that's why marginal cost is rising. Okay, then we have average total cost curve. and it looks like a more flattened U-shaped curve, and then right below it we will have the average variable cost curve. Remember, the total cost is made up of fixed cost and average variable cost. So average variable cost will always be less than your average total cost, because average variable cost is only one component of average total cost. Okay, so that's how the shape of the marginal cost curve, the average total cost curve, and average variable cost curve will look like. Now, to understand this curve better, let's go back to the slide. So when average total cost and average variable cost are increasing, so the point when average total cost and average variable cost are increasing, the marginal cost is above them. Basically, the marginal cost is greater than the average total cost and average variable cost. Look at this. When it starts going up, the marginal cost is actually greater than your average total cost or your average variable cost, right? That's exactly what I'm saying. Okay. Now, the easiest way to understand this with an example would be, let's say I gave an exam and 20 of my students took the exam and the average was 80. Okay, then 5 students were late in taking the exams, but let's say they take the exam, the remaining 5 students, they take the exam the next day, and now the average goes up to 85. Why is the average going up? Probably all these 5 students did better than 80. Their score was higher than the average score, so that's why your total average also went up. Okay, that's exactly what's happening, because your marginal cost is greater than the average total cost. That's why the average total cost is starting to go up in this case. Okay, now on the other side, when average total cost and average variable costs are decreasing, the marginal cost is below them, right? That's also easy to see when they are decreasing. So this is the portion when average variable cost and average total costs are decreasing, and at that point the marginal cost is actually below average total cost and average variable cost. Okay, again you can use the same example of the exam. 20 students took the exam and the average score was 80. Now one student was left out and he took the exam next day, and the average, after he took the exam, the average went down to 75. Why is that? Probably because he did really bad, less than the average, and that's pulling down the total average down. So that's what's happening. When the marginal cost is going down, it's also pulling down the average variable cost and average total cost down. And when marginal cost is going up, it is pulling up the average total cost and average variable cost. Okay, and one last thing to observe, which is very important, the marginal cost curve, this cost curve will intersect the average total cost curve and average variable cost curve at their minimum point. Okay, so this is the minimum point of average total cost curve, where marginal cost is equal to average total cost. This is the minimum point of average variable cost, which is the place where average variable cost is equal to your average total cost. The average variable cost is equal to your marginal cost. Okay, so slide 4 gives you a little bit of information. Marginal cost will be equal to your average total cost when the average total cost curve is at its minimum. Marginal cost curve will be equal to the average variable cost when average variable cost curve is minimum, or the curve is at the very lowest point. And then also another thing to observe is the difference between average total cost and average variable cost remains fixed, and that is the average fixed cost. So what I'm trying to say is basically the gap that we have in between this average variable cost and average total cost remains fixed, and it basically represents the average fixed cost, because average total cost is equals to AFC, which is average fixed cost plus average variable cost. So average variable cost will be always below average total cost, and when we add the average fixed cost to average variable cost, we will get the average total cost. Okay, so these are important observations from this diagram, and you need to know these things. Moving on, and this is based on the graph that we did last class, if you remember. for the total product or total output and marginal product or marginal output, we had the total product curve look like this, and then for the marginal product we had look like this. This is total product, this is marginal product. Okay, what this slide is saying is, if at first your total product curve increases at an increasing rate, and when that's happening your marginal product is increasing, okay, then it says the total product curve then increases but at a decreasing rate, and that's the place where marginal product is actually going down. It is increasing, but it's increasing at a decreasing rate, so that's why marginal product is going down. And then when marginal product is 0, this is place where it's a 0, that's the place where total product is max or maximum. Okay, that's where we are going to have the maximum output. And when marginal products becomes negative, that's when total product starts going down. We discussed about this last class, but I just wanted to go over it quickly so you guys are clear about it. Now, output choices in the production process are determined by changes in cost with changes in output, right? So what output the firms are going to produce will be determined by the cost that is incurred at different output levels. Okay, now the short run average cost curve will always be a U-shaped curve because of the law of diminishing marginal return. Again, let's say we have a fixed room or fixed plant size to produce mobile phones. Let's say after when we keep on adding workers, up to some point the output will go up, but then after that point the output will start decreasing, which means marginal costs going up, and as a result the average cost per unit will also increase. Okay, and that's why we have a U-shaped curve. Okay, I want to draw a graph and then go over each of them. There are for 3 different plants. Okay, let me do the graph. So usually these are 3 different average cost curves. Okay, usually they will be like a U-shaped curve. So let's say this is for plant 1, the short run average cost curve. Okay, this is for plant 2, which is S short run average cost curve for plant 2, and this is for plant 3, which is short run average cost curve 3. Okay, so these are for 3 different companies we have. Okay, and again here we have cost, here we have output. What it is basically trying to say, when we increase the output, the cost at first decreases until it reaches the minimum, after which as output starts going up, the cost starts going up as well, because marginal cost starts increasing, and that's because of the law of diminishing marginal return. Okay, now I have given you 3 short run average cost curves for 3 different plants or 3 different factories. Okay, so we can see the variances in the curves. Now plant 1 has a short run average curve and the minimum is here. For plant 2 the minimum here is here, and for the plant 3 the minimum is here. Now in order to increase output, a new plant is built, resulting in decreased average cost of output when producing more than 20 units to 40 units. So what it's saying is, initially we were here, now in order to reduce the cost we move to another bigger room, and that is what it is. The average cost has gone down and output has gone up at the same time. But let's say then we move on to an even bigger cost, a bigger plant size that can produce even more output, right? So let's say this is 20. This is 20, this is 40, and this is 60. We have even bigger output, but the minimum point here is actually greater than this number, than this point. Okay, so plant 2, if you look at all the 3, plant 2 has the lowest cost with increasing output compared to plant 1, and that is because of economies of scale. Whereas plant 3 has higher cost, right? This cost is greater than this because of these economies of scale. And now I'm going to explain you what is economies of scale and what is this economies of scale. This is very important in microeconomics, okay? So what does economies of scale means? Economies of scale means the average cost starts decreasing with increasing the capacity or increasing the output due to production efficiency. So here, let me show. So here, when your output is increasing, from 20 to 40 and your cost is going down. This represents economies of scale. This red portion for the second curve represents economies of scale. Again, for this curve, this represents economies of scale. With increase in output, your cost is decreasing, okay? On the other hand, these economies of scale occurs when your average cost starts going up with increase in output due to inefficiencies in production. So because of production inefficiency, average cost starts going up as you start increasing output. And this portion, this magenta portion, represents these economies of scale. Okay, which means your average cost starts going up because of increase in output due to production inefficiency. Economies of scale means average cost starts going down because of increase in production or output because of production efficiency. So out of the three, the most efficient we would say is this SRAC2, the short run average cost curve for plant 2, because this has the minimum average cost curve. This is the minimum average cost, whereas in plant 3 we can produce definitely more output, but the minimum cost is actually much higher compared to the plant 2. So why does economies of scale reduce average total cost? We just said that because of economies of scale, the average total cost will go down with the increase in output. Why does that happen? There are three reasons. The first one is because of increased specialization of labor. So as you increase more labor, what happens is more workers will become specialized in the production of what they're doing. Let's say I am producing mobile phones, then one person will be involved in designing the chip, another person will be becoming specialized in assembling the mobile, a third person will be specialized in marketing the mobile phone. So different people will be specialized in the different activities for which your production efficiency will go up and your average cost will go down. That's the first reason. The second reason is increased productivity of management. So managers become more productive. So when a firm or when a business adds worker, what happens is manager is able to manage or control greater number of workers, resulting in efficiency, right? So let's say if it's a small operation, one manager will oversee only 2 employees and will probably start micromanaging. But if it's a large firm, one manager will probably manage 7, 8 or 10, even 10 employees, and that improves efficiency, productive efficiency, okay? And finally, it is also happens because of increased use of capital resources. By capital resources we mean, technological machines and other stuff, computerized or automated systems. When we use these systems, it will decrease the cost and increase output. Let's say with a large company, more funds are available to purchase more specialized equipment such as robot and automatic manufacturing, which decreases your cost but increases the output, so which eventually results in economies of scale. So these are the three reasons that will cause economies of scale. Now, the economic long run, we look into the long run scenario. What happens to so far the graphs that we have done here, these are short run average cost curve. But now we look at the average cost curve in the long run. What happens to your cost curve, average cost curve in the long run? So in the long run, remember, based on last class and also from previous classes, we learned that in the long run, the firm has no fixed capacity. Factors of productions are not fixed, and firms can select any size of plant capacity. They will not be limited to one room. They can move to a bigger building, or they can acquire another plant and start operating, right? So factors of production are not fixed in the long run. So the long run average total cost curve is also U-shaped, but it is more flattened and broad, and it is also known as the planning curve. Okay, because producers use this to determine the best size to maximize the best size of their plan to maximize profit. Okay, and as like a normal short run average cost curve, the long run average cost curve will also be U-shaped, but as I said, more broader, and it will also display economies of scale and diseconomies of scale. So as production increases, your cost will decrease up to a certain point, and after that point, as output goes up, your cost starts going up as well. Okay, and then I want to draw the graph and I want to show you how it looks. But one thing to remember is the long run average cost curve will intersect or will be tangent to all the minimum points of the short run average cost curves. So it will touch all the minimum points of the short run average cost curves, which eventually will make it more efficient. Okay, so let me draw the graph so you guys are on the same page with me. Remember, we had three short run average cost curves. This is the minimum point, this is the minimum point, this is the minimum point, and this is SRAC1, this is SRAC3, this is SRAC2. Okay, so these are the short run average cost curves. Now we said the long run average cost curve will be U-shaped but more flattened and broad, and it will be tangent to all the minimum points of the short run average cost curve. So it will be still U-shaped, but it will touch the minimum points of all the short run average cost curve. So this is the long run average cost curve. It is a U-shaped curve, but it is broader and more flattened, and it touches the minimum points of all the short run average cost curve. Now in this case there are three, but it can be 5, it can be 2, it can be 10, but they will touch all the short run average cost curve and will be a more flattened U-shaped curve. Okay, so focusing on these economies of scale, over the higher levels of output, the long run average cost curve values do increase after a minimum point. So again, look at this. After this point, it starts going up with output. As output goes up, your long run average cost also starts going up. Okay, and that is represented by these economies of scale. Okay, these economies of scale mainly occur due to managerial problems associated with large operations. When we have problems with managing the employees, then we are faced with these economies of scale. Now, as output increases beyond some point, average cost begins to increase. Controlling cost in a large operation is more difficult than in a small operation. It's understandable because it will have many different types of activities, and it will be difficult to control cost in a large. Okay. Now, methods of dealing with these economies of scale. If we are experiencing these economies of scale, so what can we do so we can reduce our average cost and become more efficient? There are several things we can do. The first thing that we can do is we involve techniques of management principles. Okay, industries know how workers can be best utilize their labor input. So we will try to make the management more efficient, and we will also try to make the workers involved with the output. We can give them incentives that if you produce more output, you will get more benefit or you will get more salary. That way we can reduce the average cost and we can reduce these economies of scale. Okay, matching authority with responsibility is an essential dimension. So if we give essential duties and responsibilities to the workers and to the management, then we can solve this problem of these economies of scale. Okay, now we saw how the long run average total cost curve looks like, but for different industries it will have a different type of long run average cost curve. Okay, steel industry will have one type of long run average cost curve. Automobile industry will have another type of long run average cost curve. Then grocery shops will have another type of. So different industries will have different shapes of long run average cost curve, but overall they kind of look U-shaped, but they can have different shape. Okay, so some industries enjoy economies of scale for an extensive period of time because their fixed costs are very high. An example would be the automobile industry or the airline industry. Think about it, their fixed costs, regardless whether they are providing airline services or not, they have to pay for those planes, they have to pay for maintaining those planes, for storing those planes. So those are fixed costs, right? They will be there. So if I am producing more and more and more of in that industry, what happens is the fixed cost starts going down, and that's why we are going to have a very long and wide long run average cost curve. On the other hand, industries such as grocery stores or hair salons, these are small shops only run by one manager or not, and it's a small operations. Okay, there's an on-site manager who controls the cost. For them, we will see that they will experience economies of scale for a short period of time, but after some point they will start experiencing these economies of scale at relatively small output levels because their industry is very small. And again, the example would be a small grocery shop or a hair salon. So how will these curves look like? Let me draw you the curve for the grocery store and for the, let's say, the airline industry or the automobile industry. Okay, for the grocery store, it will be like this, the long run average cost curve. So they do experience economies of scale with increasing output, but only for a short period of time. After that, as output increases, they experience these economies of scale. However, what about automobile industry or airline industry where average there is a high fixed cost? So as they produce more, their average cost starts going down. So that's how big industries long run average cost curve will look like. This would be airline or automobile industry. So as you produce more, your average cost curve starts going down because they have a fixed cost. Now after some point they will probably start going up. Okay, but in general they will be much longer and their costs will start, they will experience economies of scale for a longer or extensive period of time, whereas these will experience economies of scale for a short period of time, depending on the industry. Finally, I wanted to draw a graph that summarizes of what we said in terms of the economies of scale. Okay, so and then this graph will help you basically to understand what's happening. Okay, so on this, again, we have output here and we have average cost or cost here. So this is how in reality it will look like. Okay, this portion represents economies of scale because as you see, your average cost is going down with increase in output. This portion represents these economies of scale, which means your average cost is going up as your output is growing up. Now how about this portion? This portion represents constant returns to scale. So what that means is your average cost remains the same during this period no matter what you produce. Even if you produce 100 or even if you produce 200 output, your average cost will remain the same. So during this period, there is constant returns to scale. So probably it makes sense to produce at this point because you're producing more output that is more efficient. Okay, and this is the minimum efficient scale. This is the minimum, this point is called the minimum efficient scale, which is the minimum point, and this point represents the maximum efficient scale. So up to this point we are efficient. So this is the maximum point up to which we are efficient. This is the minimum point at which we are most efficient. Okay, so this is a summary of economies of scale, these economies of scale and constant returns to scale, and that is the end of the lecture. We will stop here. It was a short lecture, which is good, I know. So in our next class we will cover lecture 10. Until then, you guys stay safe, have a good day. Bye bye.